To add.
Yes, hello. Thank you for allowing me to join.
Yes. Warm welcome, Neil. It's been ages we've been following you and your books and your research, but it's complete pleasure to see you live here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And am I right that I will be able to share my screen and present for, is it about 40 minutes, something like that?
Yeah.
Yes, Neil. Whatever you're comfortable with. And if we can have it in, we can have it in like 15 minutes, 10 minutes and 10 minutes. That would be great. We can have a short chat in between.
Oh, I'm sorry. So in other words, make sure there are breaks.
Breaks, absolutely. You know, the attention span of our generation currently is about 20 minutes, I would say. 20 and 20 will be great.
Okay, so tell me this again. Do it in, did you say 2 segments of about 20?
2 segments, yeah, 20 and 20, yeah.
And would you like for me to simply, what I had...
Can the admin mute everybody except us, please? Thank you. Parvati Ramchandran, if you can mute yourself.
I think screen share can be provided to Dr. Neil.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, Neil, what did you have to say?
I hope that it's all right. I was going to talk about nutrition, but with a particular focus on COVID. And I was going to describe how nutrition can interact with this pandemic. And I'm happy to break it in the middle if that would be a good thing to do.
Yes, that would be really nice. Yeah.
All right, very good. Let me make sure that I do that. I'm going to...
Would you like to try sharing your screen right now so that at 7 we get started with the introductions and things? Yeah, you okay? Great. That works.
Got it?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Very good.
All right, let me work on this a little bit. I'll put a natural break in here and I'll come back and join you in just a minute.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Welcome, Kalyani.
Subramaniam.
Yeah, yes. I think what we need to do is, since this is going to be a very, very serious discussion, we mute ourselves. All the participants can put up their questions on the chat box all along for any of the speakers, and then we can handle it towards the end. Welcome, Tan, Ruby. Welcome, Shankar. Welcome, Josephine. Hi, good evening, Pontap. Lovely to see you after a real long time. You're on mute, but we'll chat up, yes. Welcome, Sukanya. Kavita. Anuradha. Dr. C.V. Jayanti, welcome. Good to have you here. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Yeah. We shall be starting in a couple of minutes, and I request all the participants to stay on mute, except the speakers. We are happy to have your videos on if you plan to stay there and listen straight up. Wish you all a very, very happy World Vegan Day. And once Dr. Ashok, I think all the speakers are in, we'll kickstart in a couple of minutes. Eddie, great. You're on mute. Welcome. Xing Yi. We have a lot from our Asia Pacific region.
Okay.
Jakarta. Welcome, Sunita. Lovely to see you from the Middle East. Devi, welcome. Welcome, Dr. Jayanti. Okay, I think it's 7 and bang on target. Let's get started. We have a couple of people who are not on mute. I request the admin to please keep track and mute all others except the speaker. The speaker should be only given the ability to. That's great. Okay, let's go for it. Dr. Ashok, with your permission.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Yeah, not my permission, with everybody's permission.
Okay. So, wishing everybody a very happy World Vegan Day. As custodians of the planet, it is our responsibility to deal with all species with kindness, love, and compassion. That these animals suffer through human cruelty is beyond my understanding. And this madness has to stop now. Now, when humans act with cruelty, we characterize them and we say, oh, don't act like an animal, right? But yet the only animal that has a choice and displays cruelty is humanity. What a contradiction. This choice that we have, I want to dwell on this a little as an introduction to the entire set of participants who are here, right? So why is it that humans alone have been given this choice? Now I will go back in time and quote for you from the Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a very, very ancient Indian tome. Most of the people would be aware who are listening in here. And this is a battle between the good and the evil, right? So on the good side, there is this warrior Arjuna who is facing his entire family in the war. And he gets a doubt as to why should he fight his own relatives and kill them? And Krishna, who is his charioteer, tells Arjuna, after giving him all the knowledge on why he should fight this just war, knowledge of the soul, knowledge of the power, knowledge of this form. And in conclusion, he says, I have revealed to you a profound and confidential knowledge. Now the choice is in your hands. The choice is given to each and every one of us. And the shloka goes something like this. Iti te jnanamakhyatam guhyad guhyataram maya vimrishyait dasheshena yateshchi tatha kuru. This freedom of choice is not infinite. One cannot decide to choose and be the most intelligent person in the world. Our choices are limited by our past and present actions. And we are not in the machines in the hand of somebody. This choice is in our hands. And we have the choice as an opportunity to think, do, and be, so say, good. Or we get into the danger of making the choice and to think, do, and be evil. Okay. If you're aligned in either one of these areas, it's your choice. We, as a choice, have this moment to moment. With this prelude, I warmly welcome Dr. Ashok CK, Dr. Vaidilingam Pillai, Dr. Shankar Narayan, Dr. Jayanti, and the star of our show, Dr. Neil Burnett. I remember many years ago in the Middle East.
Originator or creator.
In the Middle East, we had welcomed so many people onto our international conferences.
或者是说你要写给
My
我
name
就方便你了，就方便你了。
My name is Sandhya Prakash, the founder of Middle East Vegetarian Group, and I'm really grateful to be moderating this session today. I'd like to get on with the proceedings by introducing Dr. Ashok CK, President, Asia Pacific Vegan Union. He's an innovator, educationist, environmentalist, a social activist, a TEDx speaker, a poet and a columnist too. Over to you, Dr. Ashok, for welcoming the entire panel and the proceedings of the World Vegan Day today. Over to you, Dr.
Thank
CK
you, thank
Ashok.
you, thank you, Dr. Sandhya. It has been a wonderful start. I would say a happy Vegan Day greetings to all the members and to the forum of the people members assembled here. And the usual is to say, my usual to start is, Ella Uyirgalum Inputru Varga. May all beings be happy. To be in the state of happiness, one has to do many things. And more than that, one should not do many things. So the important aspect in one's life is the food. The food makes or breaks one's life. And October 2nd was declared by UN as a non-violence day. And today, November 1st, is the non-violent food day. That's how the vegans celebrate the non-violence, the spirit of non-violence. That is what everybody have come together. Today, APVU, along with the world vegans and vegetarian organizations, have come together to celebrate this spirit of non-violence. And we are very happy and blessed, delighted to have none other than Dr. Neil Burnett, a strong advocate of vegan, and also president of the PCRM. And I congratulate Dr. Neil for his yeoman service to the humanity in fighting the diseases. And his organization, PCRM, has in constant innovation and research to fight the diseases across the world. And he has sent his team to India and to China and across many parts of the world to prevent diseases and also open the eyes of many to the latest trends on the food habits. So in that context, I have come across, worked very closely with Dr. Zishan Ali and toured with him across many parts of India. That is where we came to know the lot of noble vision and mission of PCRM. And I wish a country like India has the leadership of Neil and an organization like PCRM, which is the need of the hour. And in a Hindu tradition, there is a we are delighted, Neil, to have you here, and also I'm anxious to hear your insights on the vegan, how it works, especially during this pandemic. This is a great eye-opening session for all of us. So I would just conclude with a few one note, that is in a Hindu tradition, there is a practice called Naivedyam, or offering food to the god. And before one takes the food, he offers it to the god. So this is something which is some of the scientists or the new generation may think it is silly or not logical. How a stone or a statue can eat the food. But there is a deeper philosophy behind this practice, which is centuries old. The human body is created by God, and the human, in gratitude, the food is also created by the God to the humans, and the body is grown by the food. The human, in return, makes the offer to the God in gratitude. So this is a deeper philosophy. And today we all have so many diseases, and this can be prevented by the right choice of food. And especially the COVID has come to, it is a hard hitting time, and is a time for warning and wake up. And the human body is like a temple, and lot of similarities between a temple, and one should be wise to offer the choice of food. As Sandhya has rightly said in Bhagavad Gita, there is a choice to have the right food as an offering to the temple. And but generally across the world we see the body is being abused, and it is used as a dustbin or a graveyard for dead animals. So this should, from here, I think we should know how we will be I'm quite anxious to know how the body fights or gains the immune power by the vegan food. So in this context, I think Dr. Neil has come out with a lot of research and insights, how the immunity can be raised through the vegan diet, and which is very rightly the topic is, it is the need of the hour, and more than ever. To conclude with the words of Victor Hugo, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come now. Now the time has come for the vegans. Thank you very much for all of you, and let's all be united in love, grow in wisdom, and be united by the unbounded, abundant divine grace. Thank you all.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well said, Dr. Ashok. And what we can gather is the responsibility, right? The responsibility lies on each and every one of us for that choice. And who better than the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine? It is so vital to discuss that aspect of responsibility today. And in order for us to move forward, I warmly welcome Dr. Vaidilingam Pillai to felicitate our guest today. a medical practitioner. Dr. Vaidi, as we know him, is in Malaysia and a vegan advocate for many, many years, an active member of the Malaysian Vegetarian Society and Asia Pacific Vegan Union, engaging with Ministry of Health and local universities to create awareness of vegan diet to reduce non-communicable diseases. Warmly welcome Dr. Vaidi, and everybody, you can also use the reactions button there if you agree or you want to do thumbs up for all the participants. Dr. Vaidi, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Nandya. Very happy World Vegan Day today. It is with great pleasure and privilege to felicitate Dr. Neil Barnard, a great plant-based doctor of our times and father of reversing diabetes. He is an adjunct professor at the George Washington University School of Medicine and also the founding president of the Physician Committee of Responsible Medicine, established in 1985. And he is the medical director of Barnard Medical Center, established in 2015. And it is only a vegan hospital established there. He has authored many plant-based lifestyle books like Reversing Diabetes, Power Food, Losing Weight, Fighting Pain, Vegan Starter Kits, and other publications. And he is also a clinical researcher. His recommendations to reinstate the limits for cholesterol consumption in the federal dietary guidelines for Americans was well received and retained. This was a landmark case wherein PCRM won the case against USDA. He's a strong voice to end animal experiments and testings in the laboratories. These are some of the many unique achievements so far. I'm indeed fortunate to be a member of the PCRM since 1995, and following his great work and changing myself in stages to be an advocate in plant-based lifestyle in my practice and guiding the Malaysian Vegetarian Society towards vegan lifestyle. Plant-Based Health Alliance is a social enterprise that we have started in Malaysia. It was co-founded with Tim Polkowski, Ray and Gauri, all expatriates from US and Korea and India, who turned vegan after Wuhan COVID-19 lockdown in 2020. We are mimicking the 21-day vegan challenge done by PCRM. We do the 14-day vegan challenge and provide the lunch and dinner to the participants. The response and results have been very encouraging. Recently, we started the Beat Diabetes for the type 2 diabetes. Dr. Barnard, for your information, Malaysia is the fattest nation in Asia, and 1 in 5 are diabetics. Our next challenge is to organize a food summit and hope to invite you, Dr. Barnard. And finally, Mr. William Roberts, an advisor to Barnard's group, executive director of Baylor Cardiovascular Institute in Dallas, and editor of the American Journal of Cardiology, had this to say about Dr. Barnard. I quote, "He is a superb man. Anybody who devotes their life like he has done to getting us all on the right track, I admire him," unquote. Thank you.
In order to
Thank you so much
for a nice dinner, I had to make some money. So
thank
that's
you.
why
Thank you very much, Dr. Vaidi. I will say that the entire Southeast Asian region, which is represented here through Asia Pacific Vegan Union. I had the good fortune of visiting Indonesia about 10 years ago for the vegan conference, and I was so surprised at the kind of awareness that veganism had already established in the Asia Pacific Union. But to have you here today on World Vegan Day, and that too the 77th one, is fantastic. And thank you for your introduction of Dr. Neil. With no more no more ado.
Yeah, today's
Let
World
us move
Vegan
on.
Day. We just spoke about lobster, right? So she's.
I request everybody to kindly stay on mute. And secondly, in case there are more people who are wanting to join, we are live on YouTube and on Facebook. Please check the chat and you can share that link with others who wish to join. Yeah. Dr. Neil leads programs advocating preventive medicine, as you heard. But what I like the most, or really impressed, when I was in Saudi Arabia, I visited some of the research institutes and there were animal experiments. And the ethics part of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine believes in research without involving animals at all. Yeah. So with no more ado, Dr. Neil, the stage is yours, and we can't wait to hear you live. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you to my hosts for that very, very kind introduction. And thank you particularly for organizing this very, very important conference. I'm delighted to be able to be a small part of it. Thank you very much for including me and for all the wonderful work that you're doing. If you don't mind, I'd like to share my screen and to share a few images with you.
Please.
The world, very good. For better or for worse, the world is definitely changing, if I may say, and we have all noticed what is happening in the world. The coronaviruses are now part of our lives, and they're constantly seeking new hosts. Now, let me just review where we are as of today, November 1st. 14,000 people will die today from COVID-19 worldwide. And while we can say perhaps those numbers are better than where they were some months ago, it's not where we need to be. And the forecasts are for resurgence in these numbers as well, unless we take action. The good news is there are things that we can do to help ourselves, our families, our patients. And I'd like to share some of these with you. First of all, when the virus first emerged in China, one thing was very clear. When we looked at the prevalence of this virus in hospitalized patients, there was a relationship with body weight. People who were underweight didn't seem to have serious COVID infections at all. Those who were normal weight, overweight, or obese had more and more and more experience with severe COVID. There was something about excess body weight that made COVID a killer. And when the virus then spread to Europe, in France, it was very clear that, as was said here by Dr. François Patou at the University of Lille, almost all intensive care COVID-19 patients with severe obesity will end up on a ventilator. What is this relationship between excess body fat and COVID? Well, very soon it was clear that fat cells express the ACE2 receptor. And the ACE2 receptor is a bit like a welcome mat for COVID-19. The COVID-19 virus can attach to that receptor and enter the cell. And this turns lipofibroblasts into myofibroblasts and into lung fibrosis. In other words, the virus then starts to damage and destroy the lungs. These are fat cells that you see, and those little Y-shaped appendages on the top, that's the ACE2 receptor. And the virus attaches to it, and it's from there that it enters the cell. But it wasn't just overweight. It was also diabetes. When the virus emerged in China, it was clear that people who did not have diabetes had a much lower mortality rate compared to those people who had diabetes. But it wasn't just a question of whether you had diabetes. It was a question of, were you in poor control with high mortality or good control with low mortality? And if you're interested in the numbers, they defined poor control as an A1C of 8.1% and good control of 7.3%. My point is that by changing our diet, It's really quite easy to change from an A1C of 8.1% to 7.3%. Let me come back to that in a minute. So what can we do? Well, we started learning about what we could do a bit by accident. Back 30 years ago, Dr. Dean Ornish was not looking at how to lose weight. He was looking at how to reverse heart disease. And his goal was to see if that blocked artery that we see at the bottom could somehow be restored to look more like that artery that's healthy at the top. And he did an experimental program of a vegetarian diet, a half-hour walk every day, managing stress, which is why he didn't do the study here in Washington, D.C., where I live, avoiding tobacco. That was the whole program. There was no surgery, no medications. And after a year, cholesterol dropped dramatically, and bad cholesterol, LDL, dropped even more dramatically. Body weight dropped by 22 pounds, that's 10 kilograms. And the arteries were opening up so much that you could see a measurable difference in 82% of participants. Now, to see what actually happens in the arteries, this is an angiogram of one of the coronary arteries in a surgeon. That's right. The patient was a doctor who had a very badly diseased artery, and he went on the same regimen, a vegan diet, and his arteries restored, their health was restored. The point is, the body has an amazing capacity to heal. Okay, so just what about this question of losing weight? Well, when we look at what's in animal products versus what's in plant products, we see some very dramatic differences. The middle column is the cholesterol content. As you can see, there's a lot of cholesterol in beef, chicken, salmon, cheese, eggs, but not in plant products. And the saturated fat, which is the part that raises cholesterol, there's that in animal products too, and very little in plant products. All right, so our research team wanted to see, what if we try this diet in people who don't have serious heart disease, but they just want to lose weight? We brought in 64 women. They were all overweight and wanted to lose weight, and half of them went on a totally vegan diet, no animal products at all. The other half went on a more conventional diet of changing from pork to chicken or something like that. And we asked them not to change their exercise. And the initial part of the study was 14 weeks. And what we asked them to eat was fruits and grains and vegetables and legumes, or we might say pulses, beans and lentils. And our participants discovered that the foods were really quite easy for them to eat. Oatmeal porridge or blueberry pancakes or a vegetarian curry or something like that. Very, very simple. Some of them also discovered, unfortunately, that there was candy that was vegan, but we encouraged them not to eat very much of that. When we looked at their nutrient intake on the healthy vegan diet, their carbohydrates increased because they're eating rice and they're eating lentils and other starchy foods. For the control group, following the National Cholesterol Education Program diet, their carbohydrates fell. Now with fat, it fell in both groups, especially the vegan group. But when we looked at body weight, the vegans lost substantially more weight than on the conventional diet, 5.8 kilograms compared to 3.8. But what was the most important thing is that the weight loss persisted. We tracked them for an additional 2 years, and although the conventional group regained its lost weight, the vegan group kept that weight off for a year and then a second year after the study ended. Now, why does this happen? Part of it is that you're increasing fiber, you're switching from a fatty diet to a high carbohydrate diet, and that means that your calories are dropping sort of automatically. Fiber doesn't really have much in the way of calories, and fat has a lot, but carbohydrate has very little. So it's an easy thing to lose weight, but there's more to it. Animal products are very high in fat. And when we switch to plant products, we get away from the fat and the calories almost automatically. Okay. Oh, but cheese. I know there are maybe some cheese lovers in the audience today. And so that's why I put this in big, bold letters. Cheese is 70% fat. The more we get away from it, the happier we're going to be. There's one other piece of this though. We found that after people have been on a completely plant-based diet for some months, their after meal calorie burn is faster. Everybody burns calories a little bit faster after you eat a meal. That's because you're absorbing nutrients and you're burning them up. But what we find is that after a person has been vegan, they burn calories even faster. So why do people on a plant-based diet lose weight? Because they're eating fewer calories without knowing it. The high fiber foods fill them up, but they're also burning calories faster. We published new findings on this at the end of last year in the journal JAMA Network Open with our friends at Yale University. Now, we then started looking at diabetes. As you know, there's type 1 diabetes where the pancreas has stopped making insulin, type 2 where there's still insulin in the body, but the cells resist it, and gestational diabetes during pregnancy. What we're focusing on is that very common form, type 2. The pancreas is still making insulin, but the cells are resisting its action. In 2003, we began a very important research study trying to find a better diet for type 2 diabetes. The conventional diet said, don't eat so many calories. Keep your carbohydrates steady. Don't eat bad fats. Well, the new diet that we were trying was totally plant-based. We avoided animal products. We minimized oils. And we also favored low glycemic index foods. That simply means foods like beans that have starch, but the starch is released very slowly. And to show you the results, on the conventional diet, that's the red line here, blood sugar dropped, as indicated by the change in hemoglobin A1C. It dropped about 0.4 absolute percentage points. That's good. But on the vegan diet, it dropped much more. That's the blue line. It dropped, in fact, 3 times more, 1.2 absolute percentage points, or even slightly more. And I started to see patients like Vance, who had had diabetes for years, but they lost weight. They could stop their medications. Their A1C would fall into the normal range. And we discovered that diabetes for some people could be improved so much that they could reduce their medicines or stop their medicines or even have all traces of the disease go away. Other researchers have done the same sort of thing. And with this forest plot, every study gets a little black box. And if the box is to the left of the center line, that means that the A1C improved. And as you can see, it improved in every case. Let me show you the cause of type 2 diabetes. And I'd like to demonstrate this very simply. You see this purple oval. This is a cell in your body. It's, say, a muscle cell. And muscle cells are powered by glucose, sugar. Sugar is a good thing. But in this case, it can't get into the cell. It's bouncing off the cell. So I need a key to let the glucose inside, and that key is insulin. And when that insulin key attaches to the surface of the cell, it can open that cell to allow the glucose to enter, and it does. Now, in America, we think, what could ever go wrong? And Americans eat animals all the time, I'm sorry to say, and they get a lot of fat in these foods. Well, when they eat these fatty products, the fat builds up inside the cell. That's right. Animal fat, pork fat, chicken fat, fish fat, dairy fat builds up inside the cell. Now, we hate words that are too simple, like fat. So we doctors call it intramyocellular lipid, which is just a fancy word for fat inside your cells. And when the fat has built up inside the cell, the insulin key doesn't work anymore. The glucose can't get through the membrane. It just bounces off. What can I do? If I follow a vegan diet, there's no animal fat in my diet, and if I keep the oil low too, the fat starts to dissipate. And when that happens, the insulin can work again, and the glucose comes out of the blood, goes into the cell, and everybody's happy. All right. So let me take you to Yale University, where researchers look to see how early this can start. They brought in 26 healthy volunteers. They gave them a glucose tolerance test. That's a test where you swallow some sugar, And if the sugar goes up and down in your blood and it's restored to normal quickly, that's just normal insulin sensitive person. But others are insulin resistant, where their blood sugar went up and it stayed up. Well, who are they? They're young, 26, 28 years old. They're thin, 60 kilograms, 64 kilograms, and they didn't have diabetes. But we can use a special device called MR spectroscopy to look inside their cells. And I want to show you what the researchers found. On this slide, every dot is a person. And as you can see, this is the intramyocellular lipid, the fat inside the cells of these individuals. These are the healthy individuals. These are the individuals who are insulin resistant. Remember, they were young, they were healthy, but their fat inside their cells was building up. And their mitochondria, as you remember from biology, these are the tiny organelles inside the cell. In the healthy subjects, their mitochondrial activity was robust, but in the insulin-resistant subjects, it was low. What this means is, even though they're young and thin, and they don't have diabetes, the process has started because of the foods they are eating, whether it's meat, dairy products, whether it's oily foods, whether it's paneer, foods that many of us grew up with. That fat gets into the cells and you can measure it. And when it gets into the cell, it shuts down the cell's ability to work. And they won't have diabetes this year or next year or even in 5 years. But you could go into any school and do MR spectroscopy on children of 16 and 17. And you find the fat is building up inside their cells now. And the diabetes will develop in 15 or 20 years. The American Medical Association has called out on public health authorities to let people know that it's these underlying health conditions like obesity and like diabetes that can make COVID a killer. Now let me stop sharing my screen and take a little pause. After a break, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how vaccines work and how diet can actually change how a vaccine will work. But let me turn it back to our host for the moment.
Thank you very much, Neil. There is one very important point I'd like to raise at this point, which is to deal with the excessive diagnostic tools available. You mentioned MR spectroscope, right? There are so many diagnostic tools, and there's a certain fear that is prevalent in the entire population. And there is, you keep going and taking measurements of BP. You have so many other home-based measuring equipments today available. So I just want you to throw some light on research by experts. And there's so much knowledge out there, right? They are out into the open. So you end up measuring things, you Google things, and then there is a certain fear psychosis, which naturally brings down the immunity. So whatever food you take, there's only so much that a non-expert can do. So can you just throw some light on this area before we move into the COVID and whatever is happening?
What an important question. Thank you so much for raising that. And I didn't want anyone to think that if you might have diabetes or you need to be evaluated for it, that you have to go into that big magnetic donut of the magnetic resonance spectroscopy machine. This is actually not something that we use in our clinical practice. We only use it in research studies, because what we're doing in careful research studies is we want to see how foods are actually affecting the body. So we will bring in people who have a lot of fat built up in their cells, and we measure it, and then we change them to a completely plant-based diet. We measure it again, and we can see the amount of fat diminishing. But let me say that if you were to come into our clinic, we would never put you in that machine. It's only for research purposes, and that's a good thing. The fact of the matter is we can be very, very simple in the same way as the foods that are like magical medicine are really very simple things, the treasures that Indian culture has brought us over since time immemorial. Simple things like lentils and rice and spinach. These are transformed in in Indian cuisine into wonderful jewels that keep us healthy. And in the same way as our medicine, in medical practice, to tell you the truth, it's the simple things that get us the furthest.
Absolutely. The more simpler, I remember Michael Pollan's book says, there's 30 hacks. And if you go into a supermarket and you read the list of ingredients, if your grandmother can't understand even one of those ingredients, you better put it back on the shelf. Let it be simple ingredients, less of processing and so on, right? Now, moving on to my second key takeaway from the research aspect and non-use of animals in research. Can you throw light on the ethics of science a little, how PCRM works? And then we move
yes.
on. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for asking that. And I have to tell you that for me, this began during the second year of my medical school here in Washington, DC. Our pharmacology instructor said that next week we all have to do a dog lab, is what he called it. And what he meant was that students would each take a dog and take the dog onto the table and give the dog various drugs to measure how the drugs affected the dog's heart. Now, I don't want to suggest that I was a terribly courageous medical student, but I did put up my hand and say, I'm not going to participate. And he started to explain to me that he wasn't asking us to participate. He was telling us that we would participate. But as the words were coming out of his mouth, another student said, well, he's not going to do it. I'm not going to do it either. And then suddenly we had a movement. And so we refused to kill our first patient, if I can put it that way, even though that was a dog. And they ended up later canceling the animal lab completely. And when we started the physicians committee, we worked all around the United States, and we were able to eliminate every use of animals in every kind of medical education up through the MD degree throughout the United States and Canada. And other countries are following suit. And we're also showing that when we work to replace animals used in testing with more modern non-animal methods, we get that much further. But we have a long ways to go because there are still people who want to study diabetes by ignoring people with diabetes and trying to create it in a rat or a mouse or a cat or some other animal. And what I always encourage people to do is to focus on human biology, whether that's human cells or human DNA or human populations, always doing so ethically, but understanding how we can change this disease in our patients. We get that much further when we shift away from animals and toward human-based research.
I think there will be a certain empathy we will create, which will also go a long way, and also innovation in trying to think beyond using animals for human purpose. I remember in Saudi Arabia, I was invited on an IT tour of a huge research institute, and they were proudly showing off rats, one which were given a lot of salt, another which was given a lot of sugar, and the kind of eruptions. I tell you, the kind of feel, it was almost like a jail with all these diseases. It's just not done, right? So it stayed with me for almost 20 years, but it is a pleasant to my ears to hear there are other alternatives, and it's high time that we looked for that. So thank you so much. And we carry on with your second part today, and we'll reconvene after another 20 minutes.
Very good. Let me share my screen again.
Sure.
I'd like to talk about the vaccines. When the vaccines for COVID-19 emerged, everyone was very, very hopeful that this would end the pandemic. And the vaccines have in fact been very effective. However, when the Delta variant arrived in India and elsewhere, we started to see that there were some cracks in our vaccine armor a little bit. And we had here, outside of Boston, Massachusetts, a very troubling event. This occurred in July of 2021. It was our 4th of July festivities when everybody gets together and they are all out eating and things like that and partying. And in this little town of Provincetown, Massachusetts, where tourists arrived, they had almost 500 COVID-19 infections. And 3/4 of these people were already vaccinated. It was mostly the Delta variant. 5 were hospitalized. Luckily, no one died. But it raised the question, how could a vaccine not work very well? Why do vaccines sometimes fail? And we got some clues about this from a study of healthcare workers that was published in May. There were 86 healthcare workers who were studied, and they tracked their waist circumference and whether they smoked or not, and their blood pressure. And what they found was really striking. Oh, I'm sorry, they also checked their cholesterol levels. And what they found was striking. When they looked at the ability of the vaccine to create an antibody response, which you want, it changed depending on their waist circumference. In other words, the larger the waist circumference, the more that, in other words, the more obesity there was, the poorer the response to vaccines. Why would that be? For some reason, one study after another has shown whether it's an influenza vaccine or a COVID vaccine, when people are heavier, they don't respond as well to the vaccine, meaning that if we can help our patients to lose weight, they won't just feel better and be at less risk of getting the virus, but the vaccine will work better too. And then researchers looked at smokers. The smokers, that's the dark box here, they had less of an antibody response compared to non-smokers. So what that means is if a person quits smoking, their vaccines will work better. Surprising, isn't it? Now we look at blood pressure. The people in the middle here on that dark box in the middle, those are people with high blood pressure. And their antibody response was less than the people who had normal blood pressure. And finally, we look at people with high cholesterol, or what we're going to call dyslipidemia. On the far right, that dark box is people with high cholesterol levels, and they had a reduced response too. So what we can see is that when a person follows a healthy plant-based diet, and that helps bring down their body weight, it brings down their blood pressure. It brings down their cholesterol. Not only will they be less likely to have severe COVID, but their vaccines will work better as well. And if they quit a smoking habit, so much the better. Now, let's go further. There was a study of healthcare workers in 6 countries, and their diets were analyzed. And what they found is that if they were following a less plant-based diet versus a more plant-based diet, we could compare their risk of contracting severe COVID. And what the researchers found was that those people following a more plant-based diet had 73% less risk of acquiring severe COVID than those who were avoiding their plants. In other words, lentils, spinach, potatoes, rice, these simple foods are a little bit like magic when it comes to avoiding COVID. Now, researchers also looked at a fad diet, a low carbohydrate diet. You've heard of these where people say, oh, to lose weight, I should avoid bread and rice and potatoes. Well, those people did worse. Individuals who followed a low carbohydrate fad diet, who were avoiding their potatoes and bread and rice, had a 48% increased risk of developing severe COVID. The moral of this story is that a plant-based diet is good and a low carbohydrate diet is not the way you want to go. Now, there was a much larger study, the COVID symptom study, very large, almost 600,000 participants in the UK and the US. And what they did is they tracked their symptoms using their smartphones. And these were registered in the research center. And of this group, a little bit more than 30,000 of them developed COVID-19. Well, who were they? Well, they looked at their diets to try to see. They asked them, how often do you eat meat? How often do you eat dairy? How often do you eat eggs? How often do you eat vegetables? How often do you eat fruit? And what they found was amazing. If you looked at the risk of having any kind of COVID, mild, moderate, to severe, the risk of developing any kind of COVID was 9% reduced in those whose diets were more plant-based. But when you look at the risk of getting severe COVID, the risk was 41% less in those people whose diets were more plant-based. So these studies collectively show that not only does a plant-based diet help us lose weight, get our diabetes under better control so that we're going to do better, but it also makes our vaccines work better. And when we look at people who actually do this and we measure who gets COVID and who doesn't, the results are really very clear. So a healthy diet is fruits and grains and legumes and vegetables. And we have been promoting this kind of diet here in Washington, D.C. for a long, long time. There is one supplement that we encourage people to take, and that's vitamin B12. You need it for healthy nerves and healthy blood, and the amount you need is very small, just 2.4 micrograms, but we don't want to miss it. But our patients always ask us, wait a minute, I've never heard of really doing a vegan diet. I have friends who did it, but I never really thought of doing it myself. How do I even start? I want to share with you the secret. If you are working with patients who haven't yet started a plant-based diet, we break it into 2 steps, and I have never seen anyone unable to do it. Step 1 is what I call checking out the possibilities. What we do is we ask the patient to take a week and just think about foods that they would eat that are totally plant-based. And we actually give them a piece of paper. And the paper says breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. And I say, take a week. Come back here in a week with your list all filled out. Think about foods you would eat if you were following a plant-based diet and write it down. Okay, so the patient needs some suggestions, and you can suggest things for them. Foods that are based on grains and beans and vegetables and fruits. And they come back a week later and they've got all kinds of ideas. And so now our job is to simply put that list to work. We ask them to take 21 days. And during that 21 days, we're going to call it a 3-week test drive. Okay, the patient has the list, and we're going to say, we're going to be a vegan, totally vegan for the next 3 weeks. We don't have to make any promise beyond that, but for the 3 weeks, we can do it. It's easy because we already have our list. At the end of those 3 weeks, 2 things happen. The first is that patients feel physically better. They're losing weight. If they have diabetes, their blood sugars are getting better. But the other thing is they notice that their tastes are changing. They haven't had a chicken wing in 3 weeks, and they sort of don't miss it very much. And they thought they couldn't live without cheese or yogurt, but they haven't had it for 3 weeks, and they discover they feel better. And their outlook has changed. They're starting to discover books and products at the store and websites and apps and all kinds of things, and many people who are going vegan. And they also start to discover the ethical issues that relate not just to meat production, but also to the production of dairy products and eggs. And they decide, maybe I don't want to have a part in that anymore. And this becomes life transforming for many of them. For doctors, we devised an app called the Nutrition Guide for Clinicians. And we wanted this for medical students and residents and doctors in practice so that they would know how nutrition affects their patients. And it started out as a book, and then a larger book, and an even larger book. And finally, we put it online. So if you ever get a chance and just go into your search engine and put Nutrition Guide for Clinicians, you can look at how nutrition might affect everything from Alzheimer's disease to varicose veins. You'll see it there. I hope you enjoy it. Let me stop at that point and just share one final message. And that is that there's so much to know about nutrition, but we can't keep it to ourselves. It's important that we share this message far and wide. We have to make a little bit of noise so that we're saving the lives not only of our own families, but of all those around us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Neil. You touched on so many different points, and I think we need a 2-hour session for you to have in-depth discussion on each one of them. But I want, before we say goodbye to you, I don't know what's your hard stop, but the nutrition guide that you mentioned as an app, is this for universities of nutrition and for the nurses and doctors, or is it downloadable, or is it only for physicians? If you can throw a little more light, because democratization of knowledge is the current way to spread consciousness across the world. So a little more, expansion on that would be really helpful for the audience.
Thank you. Great minds think alike. It started out as a book for medical students. However, it is now on online. It is freely downloadable by everyone. It's a little bit technical because each chapter, as you'll see, if you look up diabetes, it starts out by describing what diabetes is, how it's diagnosed, what are the medical treatments that doctors are using. And then we go into the nutritional part and go into a lot of detail there. So it's the nutrition guide for clinicians. You'll see it there. But let me also mention that there are many other resources as well. If you go to our website, which is PCRM.org, that's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM.org. And if you look at PCRM.org/events, the event page has lots of information about upcoming programs that are free. And we have them featuring all kinds of cuisine for people who might want to change their diet and eat in a healthier way, and something that you can share with families. So most everything that we have there you'll see is free.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. I had the good fortune to sit and chat with Dr. Will Tuttle, who also authored the World Peace Diet. It's about 6 years now. He'd come to Dubai. And I think one of the key ways that, you know, his journey went from where he was to where he could write something called the World Peace Diet, he was mentioning, is how you look on your face. You know, at the end of the day, all the diet reflects in your eyes, your face, your behavior, your entire being, right? And that, I think, is what growth is. And if there is what he mentioned was a critical mass, right? So what do you think from the research perspective, because you have data on your side, you're dealing with so many people across cross-section of different demographics, cultural food consumption. What is that critical mass that we as vegan enthusiasts, vegetarian enthusiasts will have to go towards to actually get that tipping point for humanity to you know, really flourish and make that change?
Oh, what a great question. I often think we're not at the tipping point yet. But if I stand on my toes, I can sort of see the tipping point from here. With regard to research, I think we are way beyond the point of being able to prove that a plant-based diet is the best thing. But I think our issue really now is human behavior. Because let's face it, we grew up with a certain way of eating. In my own family, my father raised animals, raised livestock, and sent them to slaughter. And we had family members who hunted, and that was a normal thing. And to realize, you know, that that's also not good for our coronary arteries. And frankly, it's not very good for the animals. That was a hard thing for us to realize because it was our own family that was involved in these kinds of practices. And I think today, where we're having trouble recognizing these things and where it hurts a little bit to think maybe some of the things I've done are wrong, are especially when we think about, say, dairy products, for example. We want to imagine that the cow is happily giving milk and so forth, but you could go to dairies all around here in the United States and in India as well, where we see that the animals are artificially inseminated, that when they give birth, that their offspring are taken away from them. And we try to imagine maybe they all have a healthy life off in some wonderful forest somewhere. The reality is not quite so kind. And yet we're a little bit, may I even use the word, habituated or even a bit addicted to some of the things we grew up with.
Addicted is the word, yes.
And so that means we're a little bit slow to change. But you know, the good news is we're all in the same boat together. We're all reflecting on these things together. We're all struggling with this together in the same way as a person who quit smoking or quitted a drug habit or even quit eating some not so good foods. Our motivations are for our health, are for the animals, the environment, and perhaps more than anything else, for the next generation. When we think of our children and our grandchildren, what kind of world are we going to leave them? What kind of example are we going to be for them? And sometimes those things can motivate us and make us make choices that will seem a little hard now, but will become absolutely automatic in just a couple of weeks.
About the choice, moment to moment, I come back to where we started with, you know, the choice is in our hands. And Eddie has asked a question, which, with your permission, some of my patients complain about having joint pain after eating beans. What are the possible reasons and what would your advice be?
Okay, that's a great question. There are certain foods that do seem to trigger autoimmune conditions. Rheumatoid arthritis is one of them. I'm happy to tell you that beans is one that we don't see very commonly associated with it. Dairy is the biggest trigger, but meat, eggs, and some other foods can also trigger it. Dairy is by far probably the most common trigger, but we'll see it also occasionally with wheat or citrus fruits or other things. And we just eliminate them from the diet and see how they do.
Another question, a couple of people have asked, can we use air fryer or non-stick as we are opting for no oil plant-based food? Is there any health hazards? What does the research show? Yeah.
They are both fine. Maybe 30 years ago, the nonstick pans tended to degenerate fairly rapidly, and there were flecks of plastic all over the place. The new products are much, much better, and they're fine.
Thank you very much. How much cooking oil do you use in your research to consider as a minimal or low-fat vegan?
Here's how we do it. We teach people to cook without using oil at all, so they can use nonstick pans or they can boil things or steam things. But when they go to the store and they're looking at products to buy, here's how we guide them. Excuse me. If a food has no label on it, like an apple or an orange or a potato or sweet potatoes, they're perfectly fine no matter what. If you get a bunch of spinach, there's not that much fat in it. But where we're more concerned is when the food is in a package and it's got a food label on it, like a vegan pizza. And there, what I do is we ask them to look at the label. And if it has less than 3 grams of fat per serving, we're going to say, that's fine, don't worry about it. And it's a little bit arbitrary, but that's a good rule of thumb for people who are trying to lose weight or trying to reverse diabetes.
Thank you, Dr. Neil. Eva asks, I'm a cancer patient, have been told to take more omega-3 oil, 1 tablespoon of flaxseed oil. Please share your thought.
Yes, flaxseed has is a good source of omega-3, and there are many others. And nowadays, the world has changed so much that you can even get what used to be sold as fish oil, but you can get it without the fish. If you go online, you'll see EPA and DHA entirely from plant-based sources. You can take them if you wish.
SIBO and vegan diet, asks Anna. Can you elaborate on how they might influence each other? My sister seems to have extreme bloating for the past 4 years. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to tell you that there are times where people will have conditions where even going vegan is not necessarily going to eliminate it. And one of these, if I understand right, you're talking about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, or SIBO. And when this is relatively easy for doctors to diagnose, and the treatment for it that's most effective is a very short course of antibiotics. And people take the antibiotics and it knocks out the bacteria. And for many cases, that's really all you need to do.
Very interesting indeed. Tim asks, would love to help spread the work and findings of PCRM in Malaysia, Asia. So I'll tell Tim, please do get in touch with the Malaysian Vegetarian Union. I'm sure there'll be collaboration areas. And the PCRM website is extremely friendly for you to contact the doctors on your behalf. Neil, if you want to add something.
The world is gradually getting smaller. I'm delighted that that's the case because it allows us to link hands much more freely. So I look forward to working with you and to working with everyone on this.
Ginal asks, how can we study with Dr. Neil? Now we have students for you. Are there any online courses available? You did say there are events with free courses, but I guess what Ginal wants to know is there any certifications possible in nutrition and stuff like that? Cardiac health, diabetes, other lifestyle diseases, books that you may recommend.
Great, thank you very much for asking. We do have a number of things available, and one I'll mention now. In January, in the new year, we're starting a new program called One Healthy World, which is 6 weeks of classes, one of which is designed for people in the Indian subcontinent, Another one is in Mandarin for people in China. We have them in Spanish and also in French and in English. And I hope that people will get a chance to join us. It's rather basic and simple, but it's to help people to really make some big changes over a short period of time. Also at our events page, that's pcrm.org/events, you'll see all kinds of upcoming other activities and courses that you can take. We also have some people who join us as what we call Food for Life instructors. And they will learn how to do cooking demonstrations and how to work with us to share information with audiences of their own. And you'll see that at our website as well. Again, the program is called Food for Life. So thank you very much for asking about that.
Prerequisites for these?
I'm sorry?
Any prerequisites for these?
With regard to the Food for Life program is the only one that's a little bit competitive, where there is good training that's given out. And once or twice every year, we have a new training course that begins.
Awesome. Sunita asks, what is the best source for vitamin D? We are told it's the sun. Are mushrooms good? What's your opinion on that?
Okay, it's a great question. Yeah, sunlight is certainly the one that we would recommend. And not so much sunlight that is damaging to you, but maybe 20 minutes of direct sun on the face and arms each day is good. Now, if you live in Washington, D.C., where I am, it's starting to get a little cold and people are getting a lot less sunlight. And so in that case, the best source is probably a supplement. And doctors nowadays recommend a supplement of about 2,000 international units per day. That's a little bit bigger than the recommended dietary allowance in the past, but 2,000 is probably the upper limit of a safe dose.
Sunita is from the Middle East, and I do know her, and she has a lot of sun. So her question is like, do I just sit out in the sun, or do I have mushrooms? And do mushrooms carry or generate vitamin D in the body? I guess that's what she wanted to know.
Yes, I understand. There may be some in mushrooms, yes, which is presumably caused by the ultraviolet light on the mushroom itself. How much mushroom a person would actually have to have on a daily basis, I'm not sure.
How is vegan diet related to autoimmune? I don't know exactly
Yes.
what they want to ask, but this is the question from the chat box.
Yes, there are many autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or some forms of thyroid disease, like typical hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's disease. And there are others like Sjogren's disease as well. When people have been diagnosed with these things, very often they find that when they go to a vegan diet, they get better. And what we believe is happening is that their white blood cells have been reacting. The white blood cells normally react to viruses or bacteria that enter the body. The white blood cells will make antibodies to destroy those viruses. And those antibodies end up attacking your own cells. Well, it appears that food antigens, those are food proteins from the foods you eat, can trigger that same process. So if a person has some cheese, for example, the casein protein can trigger the white blood cells to release antibodies that will cause the joints to become sore. And when we get away from the foods that are a problem, the people do better. So going vegan for many, many people has been a real cure for autoimmune conditions. There are some people who have to go further and eliminate additional foods. For example, some people, unfortunately, need to get away from gluten or other things. Most people don't, but some people do.
This is a question I've always had. We'll limit it to 3 more questions, yeah? Because then we'll be done. My question to you is, I have found, at least with my body, is when I chew my food for a long period of time, very consciously, without any distractions, the day when I'm eating alone, there's much better digestion. So the saliva works on it, and whatever food, how much ever oily, it could be one of those treats that we're having. So this chewing somehow in the fast-paced life, I think has really dropped, because we grab a bite in the car and listening to music, drive to work, and so on and so forth. So what's the percentage of digestion that happens in the mouth before it reaches the tongue?
What a great question. I think what you said is exactly right. We are in such a hurry, that our digestive tract has barely any time to do its job. We're almost like a snake who finds somebody and swallows it whole and just wants to get it finished. I think, wait, stop. What we have to do is recognize that when the saliva is injected into the mouth, it's not just there for fun. It actually has enzymes in it, amylase and others, that start the digestive process happening before you've even swallowed your food. Now, if we chew very rapidly and just swallow it and try to get on with life, we are short-circuiting that process. So it's a good idea to take our time, chew it thoroughly, and let that process begin before we send the food down into the stomach and beyond.
I used to have this joke with a French gentleman, we went out for lunch once and he said, we have very slow lunches, very small meals, and we really enjoy what we have. So that's when this came up. And I thought, if you can, it comes from a doctor, people listen to it, right? So, okay, audience, I know you have lots of questions here for Dr. Neil. I think we want a hard stop at 8:15, but 2 more questions. Many vegan patients refuse COVID vaccines. What's your advice?
I'll tell you what we do here. My feeling is that it's your body and you have a right to make a decision as to what you do. That said, in our clinic, our doctors, our nurses, our medical technicians are all vaccinated, and we insist on it. And the reason for that is, first of all, the vaccines, there are risks to any medicine, including vaccines. But the risks for the Pfizer vaccine, for the Moderna vaccine, even for the Janssen vaccine are quite small. And the serious adverse reactions are quite rare. But our philosophy in our clinic is to do everything we can to keep our patients safe. So our doctors and everyone they're all vaccinated, because if we acquire the virus, we want to make sure that we can knock it out as quickly as possible so that we're not passing it along. So there are many people who adapt that philosophy in their own life. They think, yes, I'm not so thrilled about taking a medicine or taking a vaccine or injecting something into my body, but I'm going to do that to protect somebody else, to protect my spouse, my parents, other people that I live with, so that I'm not passing the virus along. In the end, it's a personal choice. Where we mandate it is with people who are actually caring for patients from day to day. And there we do mandate the vaccine.
Thank you very much. Jesse asks, and that's going to be my last question for today. How does stress affect diabetes, as prolonged diabetes causes mental issues? Is it true? And what's the relationship between stress, anxiety, and all diseases in general?
Yes, well, there are a couple of things. When a person is under stress, their body makes stress hormones. And these stress hormones, I'm talking about cortisol and its relatives, they can impair our immune function. However, there's another effect too. And that is when you're under stress, everything else goes bad. You don't sleep very well. You're not going to the gym and exercising, and you'll eat anything just to get through the day. And it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. If stress makes you stay up late or get a rocky night's sleep, then the next day you just don't feel like eating well, and you'll eat whatever you can to get through the day. And one thing leads to another. So when people are able to manage stress a little bit, then they're able to eat better, to sleep better, and to do better overall. And some people do it with a wide variety of ways. There are yoga techniques, meditation techniques, sometimes just stopping and resting, talking with a friend. You have to find what really works for you. And the idea isn't that we're going to eliminate stress. We're going to manage stress. By that, I mean, if a person is pushed off a mountain, they've got stress. But if they're jumping off with skis on their feet and they're controlling their descent, there's still stress there, but they're in charge. And that's what we need to do. There's a lot of stress in modern life. We've got a lot of work to do together to get this world functioning a little bit better. There are stresses. We try to manage them as best we can.
So well said. So well said. Thank you, Dr. Neil, for today's session on the World Vegan Day. It's my privilege, honor, and complete content to have you face to face. I know there are many people in the audience who have more questions. guys, we'll have to wait to invite them another time. I would like to invite Dr. Jayanti. If you have any closing remarks, let me not cut you out, Neil. If you have anything to say to the audience, please feel free to do that. But otherwise, I'll invite Dr. Jayanti. Dr. Jayanti is our founder of International Vegan Alliance, a yoga trainer and a passionate vegan advocate. She would like to give her vote of thanks for you and for all the time that you have spent with us. And the recording of this for all the users and listeners will be available both on YouTube and Facebook. And we hope that your launch of the training program finds a lot of resonance with many of the leaders on the vegetarian vegan movement here. Over to you, Dr. Jayanti, and at the end, I will close out after that.
Thank you, ma'am. Pranams to the divine. Happy World Vegan Day to everybody. Thank you, Dr. C.K. Ashok Kumar, President, APVU, for organizing this occasion of the Vegan Day. Vegan Day celebrations auspiciously began with the diabetic icon, Dr. Neil Barnard, who has been seen as an angel and one-stop solution by every sweet person by saving their heart, liver, lungs, eyes, brain, kidney, more and more healthy. That is your dream, Dr. Neil. We bow to you. If you could have been a cardiac surgeon, you could have saved some hundreds of hearts. As you have chosen the plant-based food advocacy and in the field of wellness, you are able to prevent millions and millions of cardiac patients through your studies. Our sincere gratitude to you. Thank you, Dr. Vaidyanathan, President, Malaysian Vegetarian Union. Thank you, Sandhya ma'am, for such a passionate moderating. Thank you, Shankarji, for being the part of the program. Thank you, all participants. And I especially thank Indonesian Veg Organization, Thai Veg Organization, Chinese Veg Organization, and all the other veg organizations, and all the Indian participants, in spite of the Deepavali festival season, spending your valuable time here. Let us join together our hands in all possible way to eradicate diabetes under Dr. Neil's program. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanti. I think you're doing an excellent job in your sphere. Dr. Neil, I would like the closing to come again on the same note of the choice that we have. And I'll refer this time to the ancient text Ramayana. And it is said that Lord Rama, after he fought the demons in Lanka and came back and started ruling in the city of Ayodhya, he would call for meetings with his entire citizens of the city, and people would come there, and he would give a lot of advice as a ruler. And it says in the local language there, it says, Nahi aniti nahi kachu prabhutai, sunahu karahu jo tumh suhai. The advice I have given you is neither incorrect nor coercive. Listen to it carefully, contemplate over it, and then do what you will. So your knowledge today, passed on, based on research, as much as possible, we can give the knowledge. But as Lord Rama says, many years ago, that the choice is in your hands. Similar to the ski that you said, you are in charge. If you come down that slope with full confidence, full trust on the ski and your ability to ski, and you have trained on that, then there's no fear, there's joy. And that it's just like the pinch of salt, the fear is just that much you need even to ski down that slope, right? So on that note, thank you so much, Dr. Neil. If any closing words from Dr. Ashok, C.K. Ashok, I would invite you to unmute, and Dr. Neil, you can unmute too.
So it's been a wonderful session, Dr. Neil. So much of research has gone in, and an experienced person like you. So you have really opened our eyes. So such a wonderful presentation really will impact and help many non-vegans to turn towards veganism. And Dr. Jayanti is going to celebrate 1 week, that is diabetes-free, reversing diabetes. I think we cannot think none other than a person like you with your experience and so much of knowledge. It is going to be a week's celebration. And if your convenience, we will be having again for a day of one of the days convenient to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Neil. It has been a wonderful session having you. So much of knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. Thank you for organizing this wonderful event and for allowing me to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy Diwali to everybody, and the Festival of Lights, may it illuminate each and every one of your lives, and may you make conscious decisions moving forward. Good night. God bless.
So wonderful comparing, Sandhya, great session. Thank you all for being patiently hearing, and a wonderful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandhya, and Dr. Ashok and Jayanti. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
And good night.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Happy
Thank you, sir.
Diwali to all.
Thank you, Gauri, sir. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanti. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Hari Om.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks.